Welcome to another episode of the Meal Prep Monday podcast. I'm your host and founder of Prep Dish, Allison Schaaf. In today's episode, I am doing some updates on rhythms, personal, family, household rhythms. So this is mainly kind of a catch-up episode. Honestly, I stopped recording new episodes last fall, August or September, took a break. Now I'm recording a few here in January. I will say for the rest of the year, one, if you want to know when we have a new episode, I would just go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. I don't know how regular I'm going to be updating the episodes. It's either going to be monthly or even as few as quarterly. We do have a lot of past episodes that touch on so many topics. So unless you've been listening for years, there's a lot of content there in the archives that you can go through as well. But for today, what I'm going to go through are some updates on just rhythms and things that are working in my house. So in 2025, we added a fourth baby. So we're up to 4 kids. The oldest is 7 years down to 9 months. And then in addition to that, in the fall, we began homeschooling with the older 2 boys. So having all of that, I found the way to really make things work has been leaning even more into systems and routines and habits and having all of that just to make sure everything runs smoothly. For me, it also means really hanging on to those mornings. I think I've talked plenty here on this podcast and past episodes that, I'm a morning person. For me, if I can wake up before the kids and have some time to myself, that's really helpful. I love to meditate and journal and do some of that in the morning. I also, in 2025, I was able to read the entire New Testament just by reading, basically 1 or 2 pages every morning. There was a yearly plan that I followed, and I just wrapped that up. So that felt good to be able to make time for that and be intentional with my reading in the mornings. So in terms of some updates, I'll start with some personal, health updates is what I would call it. The habit that had the biggest impact, I would say, on my health was my morning walks. So I have always been a walker. I've always walked 15 to 20 minutes most days of the week, sometimes a few times throughout the day. I'll just get out. I always say it's even more for my mental health and physical health. It's always been something that I've done. But in the fall, I started doing longer walks. So in our neighborhood, there's a long loop that takes like 50 to 55 minutes, whereas the short one's about half that. And I started doing the long loop. And actually, my husband joins me now too, which is great. Like we both go in the morning together. The toddler comes with us. He gets to ride on Brooke's back. So it's kind of a little fun connection time for us. But it's been interesting because the first thing I noticed was on my Oura ring, I would have quite a few hours of stress, especially during the second half of my cycle. And it wasn't really that I was feeling stressed. It more tracks your heart rate and just different things that you can't necessarily feel, right? So like if I'm feeling stressed, it doesn't always correlate to the Oura ring telling me I'm stressed, but there obviously is some like biometric markers that are, showing that. So the thing that I noticed when I started doing the walks is I started having relaxation time for the first time. And I put that into ChatGPT and was asking about it. It's like, oh, well, there might be like this natural cortisol spike that happens in the morning. And when you walk, you're really able to burn that off. And you're also getting the sun on your skin. And, all these reasons to why these morning walks were reducing the stress on my Oura ring. And then over time, the other thing I noticed is my sleep, which has gotten a lot better, having gone through 4 babies in the past, 7 years. Once one learns to sleep, then we have another regression or issue or whatever. But, I've had a few years where I struggled with sleep, and having these long walks has significantly improved my quality of sleep. I'm able to wake up and fall back asleep more easily. Now, is it that the baby's older and she's sleeping solidly, or, I think it's a combination, but the walks definitely seem to correlate with better sleep. I also take progesterone for half of my cycle, so that certainly helps during those 2 weeks that I'm taking that. If you are on progesterone, I didn't realize this, but if you take a small amount of fat with it, it helps release into the body on a more like consistent throughout the night basis, and basically just like steadies the stream of progesterone into your system. I started doing like a spoonful of sunflower butter while I take my progesterone. Oh my gosh, that also significantly improved my sleep for the half that I'm taking progesterone. So that was interesting as well. And then, I'm still doing my strength training. I do 4 mornings a week and I only do 1 lift each day. So I either do deadlift, bench, press, or squat. Mainly that's just like doable for me. Anything else, more than 1 lift, more than anything else is overwhelming for me. So I keep it simple. It's anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on kind of the amounts of what I'm doing with each of those lifts. But it's really easy to kind of fit in. Like if I wake up early, I'll do it before breakfast. If I don't, I can still do it before I jump into work. The other big thing that I wanted to touch on in this podcast is protein has still been foundational in my diet. And I believe it was 2 years ago. So this is 2026, January 2024. January 2024, I started talking about it here on this podcast with Prep Dish. We updated our super fast plans to where each meal is 30 grams of protein or more. And we've stuck by that for 2 years. I don't think it's a trend. It's not a fad. It's something that is still working for me. I'm still, especially emphasizing having protein at breakfast. I find that's the part of the day where it makes the biggest impact, mainly because I think at lunch and dinner, I was already getting protein. Although I do think sometimes at lunch, I have to be a little more intentional about making sure I have protein intake there as well. The breakfast rotation. If you want to know exactly what I eat for breakfast and my kids, it's, we all eat the same things. We are still doing that same breakfast rotation from a year and a half ago. That might almost be, I think that was a year and a half ago that I came up with that. And there's been some small tweaks along the way, but for the most part, we're still kind of following along with that breakfast rotation. And in short, the reason there's 2 reasons. So personally, the reason I like it is I have calculated what I need to do to hit kind of close to that 30 grams of protein mark. Some mornings I may not get there. I may not be as motivated to eat quite as much sausage, but I know I'm getting at least 20 plus grams and I'm not too worried about it, but I know what I need to eat to get there with each of the breakfast, depend on each day of the week. And then second, my kids love it. One, they always know what's for breakfast. They don't complain because it's just like, oh, well, today's oatmeal bowls or today's sweet potatoes and eggs. And, it's just kind of like a given. And I think they like having, after they attended a Waldorf school last year and they would even do their lunches and snacks that way of like, and kids like having that reliability and that structure. And so for breakfast, and it helps. When I wake up in the morning, I don't have to think about it. I just know here's what we're having, but it's something it's new every day, even though it's not new every week. And it's just working really well for us. Even, here we are like almost 2 years later. So health updates, that's kind of it. Super fast menus for sure is the go-to. If I see one of the other meal plans that have something like a favorite recipe, then either I'll add in that recipe or I'll switch up the meal plan. But the super fast ones are definitely the ones where I'm reaching for most often in my house. Homeschool rhythm. So we're 1 semester into homeschooling. It's been working well. I've enjoyed it. The kids have enjoyed it. They have a co-op they go to once a week. They have some activities they go to. I like that homeschooling gives us the option to do a few activities without feeling like we're overloaded with a lot of going here, there, and everywhere. And we do, when we sit down at breakfast, I just kind of tack on doing like a unit study as a family. And that's nice because there's music involved. There's a hand rhyme. So Tobin, who's now 2, he can join in. And that's kind of the part that he's a part of. And then any of the academic type stuff I do in the afternoon, mainly so I can do my work in the morning. And then we kind of have set times in the afternoon. That is one thing. And when we first started, I tried to we'll just fit it in today and when it works. But I found both for me and the kids, it's good if it's a set time, almost like an alarm clock goes off for all of us. And so we just know, okay, here's the time when we meet and here's what we do at this time. Because what I found would happen otherwise, sometimes we'll just skip today. And I didn't really, it got where I wasn't liking that. So we do have kind of set times and I'll actually put it on the calendar each week, mainly as a reminder to me to hey, don't book a call or, keep that time open. And yeah, it's working really well. We've done a lot of day trips to places. The Aruba World School was the big kickoff and TBD on potential World School updates. I may have an update later this year. There is a program called the Boundless Program, and we're looking into that. We thought it was something we'd do much later, but part of the issues with having the baby and the toddler, we're not really ready to go all in on traveling too much right now, but going to a place and staying for a while could be a better fit. So we're exploring some options there, but nothing set in stone yet. I've had my planning meeting with Brooke. I did a podcast episode on The Lively Show with Bella about my yearly family planning retreat with Brooke. I think I've done an episode of it here a few years ago, but Brooke and I meet once a year just to go over our planning for our family and, looking at the past year, planning ahead for the future. And we did do that in December. We drove out to Marfa and came up with, everything. And one of our things that we always talk about is the goal of going to all 63 national parks. So we have come up with some ideas for parks that we want to go to this year. As you know from my episode in August, I have a scratch off map on Amazon that tracks your national parks. So if you're interested in that, that's something that I'm still doing there kind of as a side project. And then, I know the other thing I was going to add is just kind of a life rhythm update. One thing I have started doing, usually on Sundays, or sometimes it ends up being a Saturday, but I've started doing more of I haven't figured out the exact right name for it, but I kind of say it's a vibe, like a dinner. It's not a prep dish dinner. We, in the summer especially, or even the fall, our garden did really well this year because we, did this like fenced in garden. And in the fall especially, we started having tomatoes and basil, and I'd make a caprese salad. But anyway, back to these like Sunday dinners. I will not use a prep dish recipe. I actually don't use a recipe at all. I kind of will see what's in the garden or see what I want to have. Maybe using some fresh herbs. It's usually pasta. I'll play some French cafe music. The boys will help and kind of come in. And it's just kind of more of I'll open a bottle of the Dry Farm wines. And it's just more of like a laid back dinner where I spend a little more time just enjoying the process and creating whatever, maybe it's, I did a fish recipe one time and it was really good. It was fish with like a butter and herb and like some white wine sauce or whatever. And so just kind of a time to be more creative and actually enjoy my time in the kitchen. And I mean, we're still eating at 5, but I kind of start a little earlier. So it feels more relaxed and just kind of, I don't know. It's a Sunday dinner ritual that I am enjoying. Maybe I'm planning out the protein, but the rest I'm kind of just letting whatever comes to me come to me in terms of flavors and what I'm creating. And it's been more fun. And one Sunday we got a few different ice creams to try for dessert. And I even set up a little ice cream stand. So that's been a fun little weekly addition that we do on usually Sunday evenings. So yeah, those are some of my updates. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not sure when the next episode will be. I will be checking in throughout the year, either on a monthly or quarterly basis. Between now and then, if you are not signed up for our newsletter, I will say that's a good way to stay in touch with us. And of course, if you want to try the meal plans, you always have that free trial, prepdish.com/MPM. That's the best way to try them out. And January, I feel like, is a month of like reevaluating and looking at those rhythms and your intentions and figuring out what works for you and your family. And I'm hoping that you are able to set aside some time to do that as we continue to head into the new year of 2026. So thank you for listening today. And I will be back again on another Monday. Not sure which one, but with another episode. Until then.